Today, we're going to be talking about why narcissists do not improve, why change with a narcissist is just highly not likely. And I'm so excited that you're joining me today. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. And this is something that many of us really spend a lot of time wondering about, like what's happening to our partner. Is it just a state-driven issue, or is this something much more deeper? Why is it so resistant to things like therapy, um, common other treatments? Why do they not get better? Why doesn't couple therapy work? So we're going to really get into a deeper explanation of why narcissists don't change. And I always do that. I try to put my my notes in front of me, and I touch the top of the screen, and it suddenly just shifts it all into the big picture. Anyway, I got it fixed. Okay, so I think the first problem we have is we don't actually recognize what real change looks like. And by the way, if you're new to me, thank you so much for joining. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm excited that you're here. For those of you on TikTok as well as on YouTube, I don't have my mods today. Today I'm hanging it here alone with you guys. So it's going to be a little tricky as I try to navigate multiple platforms. But we're going to get through this together. So thank you so much for joining me. But I know so many of us, and I was one of them, spent an enormous amount of time trying to figure out what we can do to save the relationship. And we make some assumptions about other people. We make assumptions about personality disorders or about people in general, that everything can be changed. I mean, that's why I got into the business that I did. That's why I became a psychologist, is because I was very motivated to not only be different myself, but also because I really believed that most people want to be different. I mean, they say that, right? I mean, we hear that as a person in a toxic relationship, that they're trying so hard, that they're truly sincere, and that the effort is real. We get a lot of lip service about that. So we end up thinking, well, I mean, they're saying that, and isn't that an indication of real change? But here's what the problem is that we actually don't recognize what real change looks like. So let me tell you where we're going to go first. Let's talk about real change, the signs of real change, why real change often gets missed, why we end up thinking we're seeing real change when we're not, how they trick you into thinking they're changing when they're actually not changing. I want to get into what's called pro-change manipulation that's discussed by Dr. George Simon. So we're going to break that down into that. And give you some practical examples of pro-change manipulation that looks like change, but actually isn't really change. And then I want to talk about what change actually takes. What kind of skills do you have to change? And if we have time, then we're going to talk about the difference between real change and just manipulation, so that you can kind of do a comparison back and forth. But that's if we have time, because I always like to save the last 15 to 20 minutes for your questions. So stick around if you have a topic that you want to talk about, and it could be about anything. It could be about psychopaths, as I've been talking a lot about psychopaths lately. Maybe you're somebody who's struggling with an abusive child who's an adult now. Maybe you're a parent has a child who's gone no contact and you want to know what to do about it. I mean, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about at the end, but I hope you'll stick around to about 45 minutes from now, when we will take your questions before I wrap up. So here's what real change looks like that we tend to get wrong in a relationship. Real change is consistent. It's not situational. So people just don't act differently briefly after a consequence, after being called out. Their behavior consistently changes, and especially notice this, and it is different when no one's watching. And it's different even if it costs them comfort, power, and pride. Most of us don't understand that just because somebody says they want to be different and they say they're trying, unless you see them doing this in secret, doing this when no one's watching, doing this when it costs them their pride and their power and comfort, then you're seeing real change, not a situational shift. Real change is an internal process. It's not performative. It includes real, genuine insight into what that person's done that's caused the harm, not just because they got caught, but because they want to be a different person. You're going to hear things that indicate integrity, like, I understand what I've did is harmful, and they'll also understand that sometimes it's not repairable. So you'll see them indicate that They know that there may be no amends. Even though they're making amends, you'll see that there may actually be no amends because what they did is so harmful that they know there's no take back. People who are not understanding what real change looks like don't understand that part. They often are very superficial and it's very performative. You'll see an ongoing effort, not something that's just a one-time fix. That there is a consistent commitment to growth, self-reflection, and they don't just apologize, they actually allow themselves to sit in the discomfort. And it doesn't stop after one argument or it doesn't stop after one promise. A lot of times people who are doing a more shallow change will make an initial shift and say they're trying really hard, but the minute you have a reaction, like it really hurt you terribly, then they suddenly have a resentful attitude and everything is as if it's back off the table. But real change is an ongoing process, not a one-time fix. You'll also notice that it's empathy driven, not ego driven, that they are prioritizing your emotional safety even when they're feeling ashamed or when they're feeling angry. And you're not walking around feeling like you have to manage their feelings or that you're back on walking on eggshells. You'll also notice that there's accountability that's not defensive. They don't shift blame. They're not minimizing or twisting the story. They don't weaponize their past as a way to excuse the abuse. Like, well, I had trauma, or my childhood is rough, or my dad wasn't any better, or I had no good examples. They recognize the pain they caused, and even if it was unintentional, and they validate your experience so that you feel safer, more respected, less confused, so that you're no longer second guessing what's real, or you're not walking around feeling really small. So thank you so much for those of you who are joining me on TikTok. If you will tap the screen and make sure to share this with somebody that maybe needs to see this, because we're going to be getting really into depth about how narcissists manipulate you, the survivor, into thinking that you're changing when it's not. Because one of the things that happens, and I see this all the time, is that we often think there's change behavior that looks like change, but it actually is not change. And I want to get into what Dr. George Simon calls pro-social change. So if you can make sure to share that with somebody, maybe somebody in your life right now is battling this. They have a partner who's saying all the right words. And if you guys know my story that I share in Love You More, that's what happened to me. This guy was reading books, underlining them. He was going to weekly therapy sessions. He would talk about what he was reading and the ahas he was having while he was still acting out. The acting out never stopped. He just got better at hiding it. But he used pro-change behavior to make me think that there really was authentic insight when there actually wasn't. So I want to make sure that we know the differences between what pro-change behavior looks like, which is really just a form of manipulation. It's not real change, it's just manipulation. So why do we miss the signs of change? Why? I want to first turn the spotlight onto victims, why we often struggle to recognize that this isn't really changed behavior. This part's hard. I want to hold your hand while we do this, because I want to tell you I was right there with you when this was happening. For me, I really wanted this relationship to work. I was very invested in it. I loved him, honestly, as much as he deeply shredded my heart and broke my trust and severely betrayed me. I really loved the person, because partly I fell in love with his potential. I think if I'd known that the person I had met wasn't really who I was meeting and that he was actually who he really was, I wouldn't have chosen him. But the person he presented was so amazing that I wanted that to work. I wanted the person I met in the love bombing to come back. I didn't realize that it was just a facade, just a form of manipulation to get me and keep me in the relationship. So here's some of the reasons why we get caught up by pseudo-change behavior and we fail to recognize it. It's often because whether we recognize it or not, we're starved for hope. I bet you thought I'm going to tell you you're starved for love. No, you're starved for hope. You want to believe that what you see is real, and you want to believe the person you met is possible, that they can come back. That's what I was in love with, is the potential of hope. So you don't realize that the hope is becoming a survival strategy, not actually, that it's not actually authentic, that it's just a form of survival. It's a way for you to survive the bad times is by focusing on the possibility of the good times coming back again. You keep thinking this time's going to be different. They've apologized. They say they're going to therapy, and you really want to believe this is different. Hey, thank you so much. Someone just commented on my podcast, and it's on hiatus right now. Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse is on a break. I, by the way, am still posting on Substack. So you know how I had that podcast extra where each week I had a different kind of guests highlighted. But this time what I'm doing, I'm telling my story. So there is still a special component for paid subscribers if you are a paid subscriber over there. And that is you get to hear my story, the things that I learned and the big ahas. So instead of an interview, you get to hear that. And also some big takeaways that are exclusive to the to subscribers. And on the 9th, so July 9th, which is next week, Wednesday, I'm doing an Ask Me Anything. And this is for anybody who's a paid subscriber on YouTube or on Substack. So if you are a paid subscriber on YouTube or Substack, you should have gotten, or you're a club member, if you're a Toxic Free Relationship Club member, you should have gotten an email from me as an invitation to this Ask Me Anything. And I'm wondering if I did send it out to YouTube subscribers. Man, guys, I need to make sure I send you the link of how to do that. I will do that after I get off this live, or do this tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll send you that link so you guys can sign up for it. But I'm holding an exclusive event of a free event for all my paid subscribers as my thank you for running through the summer with a hiatus. I really, it's been wonderful to slow down. I'm not stopping, obviously, but it's been wonderful to slow down. But I would love to see you and get to see you on Zoom. It's not actually on Zoom, it's a Google Meet. Get to see you on a Google Meet, see your face, hear you talk about your question. That would be so amazing. So I hope you guys join me next week for July 9th, Ask Me Anything. And if you're not a subscriber, this is the time to do it. Either whether you're a super survivor or a super thriver on YouTube, or if you're just if you're a Substack survivor, I'm sorry, I can't speak. I'm speaking so fast. Subscriber, I would love you to become one and then join me on the 9th for Ask Me Anything. Okay, so the first is that you're starved for hope. And so when you see signs of trying, you're tempted to believe that it's real. The second reason that you are fooled is because they copy the language of change. I really want to say that again because this is so important. They copy the language of change. Narcissists and psychopaths, sociopaths are masterful at emotional mimicry. They watch you. They have been listening to you, and they are parroting back the words that they know you want to hear. If you think about it, because of the deficits they have that are hardwired into their personality from birth, and I know people don't like this, boy, you want to see anger, go to my video on when your child's the abuser. Whew, jeez, it's nasty in there. But we really don't like the idea that some kids are just come out this way. But so if they're this way from birth, and that means they have a survival mechanism that is about fitting in and winning. They're very competitive, jealous people. And as a result, they have learned to mimic and copy what they see around them. They're not actually very empathic. But they're empathic enough to weaponize it, but not empathic enough to care about how they affect you. So they've gotten very good at this because they've had a lifetime of practice, because they see themselves as trying to win or trying to survive. They really do believe this is a dog-eat-dog world. And so they've become extremely, extremely skilled. And they know you better than you know yourself. They know what you want to hear, and they're very good at giving that back to you. They know you want to hear words like, I know I've hurt you, or I'm trying to be better, or I know it wasn't okay, I get it now. They're very good at saying those things, but if you watch their behavior, watch the pattern, you're going to see that there's no authenticity to this. There's no follow through, because these individuals cannot sustain emotional discomfort, and they don't want the work that is required for real behavioral change. It's just a manipulative strategy. Number 3 is you've been gaslit a lot. This person has spent years, at least months and maybe years telling you that you're too sensitive, that you're overreacting, that you're never satisfied whenever you talk about anything that they decided they don't want to hear, anything that they kind of perceive is challenging. So as a result, you started second guessing yourself. You start thinking, well, maybe I am being too hard, or maybe progress has relapsed. That's what I did. I actually told myself that I had needed to expect him to relapse and betray me because I knew that healing from addiction often included relapse. So I actually expected that. And then, of course, he knew that, and then he just, moved right in and used it whenever it was convenient for him. So watch out for the gaslighting that really makes you doubt yourself. And number 4 is that you mistaken remorse for change. I'll never forget a really powerful thing that, and by the way, I'm interviewing him tomorrow. Dr. Peter Salerno is going to be again he's going to be a long interview come this fall. So the fall lineup for the podcast is really amazing, really amazing. And Dr. Peter Salerno is coming back, and we're going to take a long time for this interview. We're going to go like 45 minutes to close to an hour on it. But one of the things he said in that first interview with him that I had about a year and a half ago was, he said, what you're seeing from them is not shame. A lot of us, you hear, a lot of people, a lot of clinicians will tell you, oh, they're shame-based people. Dr. George Simon disagrees. Dr. Peter Salerno disagrees. They say, no, they're not shame-based. What they're feeling is they're feeling humiliated. They don't like feeling caught out by you. They don't like they believe that they're better than you, that they're superior than you. And the fact that you have caught them in some way and pointed that out in that moment, first, they're enraged with you for that. There's going to be retaliation for that because that's a narcissistic wound. But secondly, they're feeling momentarily an experience of humiliation for being brought down, for the fact that you've kind of knocked their legs out from underneath of them. But that's not remorse. We think that's remorse, but that's not remorse. So all that crying and begging and saying, I can't believe that I hurt you like that it may look like vulnerability, but again, you have to watch the whole pattern. There's no follow through. Instead, this is just either a moment of self-pity that they're having for themselves, or it's another form of manipulation, because real change doesn't depend on an emotional response. It's a consistent behavioral difference, as I said, done in secrecy. It's done with consistency. It's done with integrity, because real change is about somebody deciding that that's not who they want to be and they're going to be different. So, and then the last reason you get tricked by this into pseudo-change, thinking it's real, is because you've been trauma bonded. In trauma bonded, you are highly activated. You have this massive fight or flight experience going on constantly. And as a result, you want relief from that. You want something to stop so that you feel better. And you're craving to hear the right words so that you can know that maybe you're going to be safe. So this momentary experience of kindness, or even a momentary remorse, may feel like a big, huge experience of better. It's better, and that feels so much better that you're like, whew, okay, we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. I remember that so clearly. Every time he would say anything that sounded like, like any type of minimal repair, I would become so relieved, thinking we're on better footing now. We're heading in the right direction. It's going to start to look different than it used to, but it didn't. It was just a distraction. That's the problem. It was just a distraction. There was a moment, for those of you who read the story, Love You More, where we're in for his second polygraph, and I've been forced to ask him the most difficult question out loud in front of him before he got to hear it in the polygraph, which was, did he marry me for the money? And I knew that was a hot button. I knew that he was going to be enraged, and he did. He actually quietly removed all the credit cards and told me he wouldn't be needing them again. And I was scared. I'll tell you, I really expected that I was in danger. I thought I was in danger in that moment. And I knew I was going to have to get in a car and go home with this person, get on a flight with this person, and that I was just terrified. And when the whole thing was done, here I am. Can you imagine the level of fear? I was so terrified. While he was taking the polygraph, I ran to the car, called my mom sobbing, just sobbing. And then I went back in when they were giving me the results. And in that moment, I couldn't believe that the counselor is putting me at this kind of risk and was not even addressing the fact that this person had the potential to be dangerous. So I'm back in the car and waited with bated breath. I mean, literally holding my breath, waiting to see what the next move is going to be, whether or not he was going to threaten me, whether or not he was going to hurt me, and you know what he did? He looked over at me and he said, I just had a sudden thought. And I said, what? And he said, this is how you feel. What I'm feeling right now is how I feel every time I betray you. And I just was so relieved. It was what I wanted to hear. I actually broke out in tears of gratefulness because I was feeling so like understood, but I didn't realize that this was what the trauma bond was doing to me, that I was so flooded that I wanted anything to give me some regulation, some stability. And that him saying that he was increasing the trauma bond because he swung into the exact thing that I wanted to hear in that moment. So I want you to be very, very careful about that. In fact, next week, we're going to talk about the addictive cycle of a narcissistic relationship. There is a component of it that is very addicting. I got addicted to it. This is an example of how that got expressed. So be very, very careful that you're looking for signs of relief because you are exhausted of being in a fight or flight state. And so when you get this momentary understanding or kindness or remorsefulness, you end up thinking, oh, yes, yes, when really it's just another form of manipulation. So be extremely careful. So here's how they fool you. Let's get into that. This is what Dr. George Simon calls pro-change behavior. That's actually responsibility avoidance. So pro-change behavior is what it sounds like. It's the behavior the steps that we make when we plan to do something differently. So if you've made a commitment to better self-care this year, chances are you may be more careful with water. You may be, trying to get a little more exercises, or you're watching your steps. You're doing things that show people that you're sincere about your change, But unfortunately, people who are pathological or have character disturbances, they use pro-change behavior to distract us and fool us. It's not actually really changed behavior. And it's used to manipulate your perception. I want you to hear me again on that. That is so important. They use these behaviors to manipulate your perception. Again, think of false gestures. They're not actual real. They're just in order to mollify you, pacify you. And the real intent here is so that they can regain control, not because they want to heal or evolve or become a better person. It's just to regain control and power over the situation. So examples of responsibility avoidant tactics include like token gestures, like going to therapy, but they actually aren't the one that maybe they even make the call. Mine actually made the call. But what I found out later was that he at times was stashing the phone and doing something else. I actually caught a text conversation from his therapist, said that he'd missed him for the session. And here he'd come home and said he had an extra long session and it was an hour and a half. And I found out, no, the guy never even went. So it may be gestures that are token gestures, but there's nothing really authentic to it. They'll say sorry, but they're only saying sorry just to shut the conversation down, not because they're actually feeling terrible about what they did to you. And if they do say they're sorry that you have a feeling about it or that they got caught. They're not sorry about their behavior or what their behavior said or how it's affecting you. They'll read a book, mine did that, and it will sound insightful, but they're actually not applying whatever they're reading and understanding. So token gestures, watch out for that. Secondly, they're going to use all the right language to disarm you. They'll say things like, I know I've hurt you, or I'm taking full responsibility now. One, I heard that a lot. Or I'm working on myself now. What mine used to say, I've never tried harder. I've never worked harder. He said that all the time. I've never worked harder. I want you to hear me. These phrases are being rehearsed and they're being said too soon. There's not been any real emotional processing about what they're saying or what this means. They're just doing this as a way to disarm you, to get back power and control. They'll often use, they'll shift to the victim mode. Like they'll make themselves to look really pitiful or like they're down and out and broken. You'll see them having a crying jag, or breaking down for making you feel breaking down, and it makes you feel guilty for what you're doing to them. So be really careful about this centering themselves in the betrayal or the trauma, when really you should be the one who's being centered, not them. You should be the one being centered. And they'll also they'll say things like, I hate myself for what I did, which again, remember, this is all about them. It's not about you, it's about them. They're not the focus. You're the focus. So ask yourself in the middle of this, who is the one being centered here? Are they caring for the impact on me? Are they looking to repair the damage or the way I'm now traumatized based on that? Or is it really still they're front and center, but now about themselves and about the bad thing they did? There was a moment where my ex had told me that he and his girlfriend that he saw during our break, we took a break where we were considering getting a divorce. We weren't divorced, we were considering getting divorced. And his girlfriend flew in, and he said to me, well, she can't believe that she did this because I'm married and she knows that. By the way, I'm now, all of that, it's all just words. There's no real meaning to that. But, it sounded good. So he was saying this, and he said, she can't believe that he did this. And I said, wait a minute. You're making this out to sound like there's nobility in her having an awareness that she shouldn't be having a relationship with a married person. There's no nobility in this. And then he said, well, Kerry, you're just going to have to decide whether or not you can live with a sex addict or not. So, again, what happened there? He made himself the victim, and I was being the bad one for having a reaction and calling him out. So really, really watch out for that. They shift themselves and make themselves a victim. And then the last reason that is a pro-change behavior that really is a form of manipulation is superficial compliance. They'll and you guys have all seen this, they're good for 2 weeks, but it's only 2 weeks. And the minute something, tense or comes back up and 2 weeks are over, they go right back to the way that they was. They promise you it's different this time, but it's not. It's just a momentary reprisal. I can't say that word. Reprisal. That's the word. Reprisal from their normal behavior. So be really, really careful about this superficial compliance. They'll follow the rules just enough to claim progress, but it's not actually authentic. So if you feel doubt, if you're feeling confused, I really want you to, if you're feeling like you should pause your exit strategy, I want you to really give this some thought. That's the purpose of this. They've been called out. They're afraid that change is coming and they're not ready for it. So they're using these tactics as a delay strategy, as a distraction strategy. It isn't authentic. There's nothing about it authentic. So I want to give you a list of what these behaviors actually look like, in addition to the ones that I already mentioned. So I already mentioned token gestures, also wordplay without any action, self-pity as a shield, false promises about the future. Oh, here's a good one. False promises about future change. Just give me some time. I promise I'll be better as soon as I get this project done at work, or it'll be better starting the new year, or I'm working on it, but there's no progress. Watch out for weaponized vulnerability. Like they'll have this sudden disclosure of trauma, like, oh, I know why I did this. I had this revelation. Mine told me that he had been abused as a child, was sort of his justification for his bad behavior, and his dad was an awful person. So watch out for that, because bottom line, it really doesn't matter why they do what they do. We're always still in control of our behavior. We always still have free choice. So, come at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself and account for what you do. So it's like saying the devil made me do it. No, the devil didn't make you do it. You did it all by yourself. Also watch out for charm, the fact that they're going to love bomb you again, do something romantic, bring home the flowers, or suggest a romantic getaway, plan a special night. What they're trying to do is bypass accountability with using positive reinforcement. So be just super careful about that you don't, again, just get distracted. And they're going to also deflect using spirituality or their identity. Like, that's not who I am anymore. I'm trying to be a different person. Or I've prayed about it and I feel some peace, but they've never really actually addressed the harm. Or they're going to hide behind a new identity, like I'm sober now, or am I healing my inner child, but there's no real relational repair with you. They just throw these things out as if you're supposed to, again, be mollified by them and think, oh, that's good enough, even though I don't feel safe in the relationship because you found God or because you're healing your inner child. Now I'm supposed to feel better. No, if there's, if this, think of this, this is a rebrand without repair. Watch out for rebrands without repair. And then there's also this manufactured confusion and contradiction. So they might this often happens when it is involved with sexual behavior. They'll admit to some small wrong thing, but they're concealing a much bigger one. That's what my ex did. There's something you find out later. This is just like the tip of the iceberg, and it's way worse than you ever imagined. Or they start agreeing with you, but then later undermine you. Or they'll change the narrative mid-discussion and say, I never said that, or that's not how it happened. So again, what they're doing there is they're trying to exhaust you and destabilize your reality checking system. So be very, very careful about that. Or here's another really good one, is they'll enlist outside validation. I hate this one. Watch out for, if you hear somebody appealing to their credibility, appealing to their work experience or what other people think of them, I want you to think of this is somebody who's using this mechanism like tattling. Think of a bunch of kids together like, Mom, that's what essentially they're doing, is they're bringing in the big guns to increase their credibility. At that moment, remind yourself that this is just another tactic to discredit your truth. So I want you to think about the fact that, if they say things like, well, my mom claims I'm changed, or my therapist talks about how much change I have, or my therapist agrees with me. No, that's just outside validation. It has nothing to do with what's actually happening between you and the other person. Okay, so let's talk about why change is so hard, and why is it so hard when you're a narcissist or you're a psychopath? Why is this not possible? It is possible, even though you may have, the bottom line is they're lacking self-reflection. They're struggling with empathy. They don't really engage in intimacy. They often have a very minimal or limited conscience. They're not very I already said that, self-reflective. They're extremely self-focused. So everything is always front and center about how it is for them and what their experience is. And they often have a lot of problems with impulse control, and they're novelty seeking. So they're something internally with them is sort of flat and not really not purposeful, not very well driven. And so they're looking for the next charge. They're often adrenaline junkies. But psychological change, when you think about this, these are the qualities that it takes to make change. And yes, some of these things can be learned. I mean, you can become more empathic. You can ask yourself, what would it feel like if this was happened to me? That's called cognitive empathy. But they don't engage in that because they don't want to lose. This goes back to their underlying pinning of, I need to win at all cost. And that I really, it doesn't matter, because what matters is that I come out on top. There's this highly jealous component to these individuals that make them believe that the world is really literally a dog-eat-dog world. So as a result, they're extremely motivated for self-preservation to the exclusion of a relationship. They don't believe anybody has their back. Nobody has their back. You can't do enough to show that you have their, believe me, if anybody could have done it, I would have. I mean, I really tried to be there for this person, to really create an environment for this person to be able to feel safe with me, but that wasn't happening. So I want you to think about these skills and ask yourself, does this person have these skills? Are they showing this when no one's watching? Again, you really use that idea of when no one's watching, because otherwise this is just performative, and anybody can do something briefly just to make themselves look good. And these people are very much about making themselves look good. So they have to have self-awareness. That means you're observing your own thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, and you're open and willing to recognize defensiveness like denial, projection, rationalization, splitting, things like that. And they have a willingness to reflect on how their actions are impacting other people. So if you don't have any self-awareness, then there's no internal accountability. All that you're going to be doing at that point is blame shifting. Another skill you need to have is empathy. Not just, you need both cognitive and emotional, and that's the ability to attune to other people's pain and perspective, and a willingness to sit in the guilt and shame without deflecting from it. You have a willingness to take another person's experience seriously, even if it wasn't intentional. The problem is with narcissists is what psychology calls, they don't part objects. They see other people as not whole people, whole beings, separate individuals. They see them as objects. And in psychology, we call that a part object. So they see you like a tool. I think that's the best way to describe it. You're like their iPhone. They want you there when they want you, and they want you there in the way that they want you. And so they're not sensitive or caring about how it impacts you, because of the lack of conscience and empathy. You have to change emotional regulation. You need to be comfortable or get comfortable with shame, frustration, anger, envy without acting out. I mean, here's the critical piece. A emotionally mature person does not act out just because they feel something emotionally. You need to learn how to sit with very uncomfortable feelings and not act out. You have to learn to manage your impulses rather than blaming other people. And you have to accept limits and disagreements and criticism from other people without collapsing or attacking. So that's a huge thing. A lot of people really struggle with emotional regulation. Real change requires you to learn the ability to pause instead of rushing out to punish somebody for it. Number 4, humility. You need to learn to let go of the need to be right, admired, or in control, and admit that you're wrong without any conditions or qualifications. You have to learn to admit that sometimes your worldview is not always accurate or better than other people. Change cannot occur when you feel in a position of entitlement. Change doesn't occur with entitlement. Number 5 is delayed gratification. You have to choose the long-term relational health over a short-term emotional release. That means sticking with the discomfort of change rather than looking for quick relief. And you need to be committed to growth even when there's no immediate reward or praise for it. By the way, that's super hard. There's no quick fixes and no shortcuts to change. And so if you see someone who's like mine, would put Post-it notes on the mirror thinking that somehow reading these quotes is going to make a difference. I don't care how many Post-it notes you put all over that apartment. That's not going to create maturity. Maturity requires commitment to growth despite no immediate reward or change. Number 6, accountability. It requires you owning that you've harmed somebody without minimizing it, without blaming or distorting the facts. It requires direct amends, not just an apology, with a focus on repair. And it requires inviting feedback from other people and remaining open to constant evaluation. So accountability is doing the work, not just saying the right things. Number 7 is consistency. It means showing up over time, even when it's hard or inconvenient. It's aligning yourself with your words and your actions and your values. And it means following through even when no one's watching. So if there's not any consistency, then this is just a form of manipulation. Number 8, it requires a capacity for intimacy. That means that you need to be mutually vulnerable and emotionally honest, and you need to allow space for other people to have boundaries and needs and a separate self, for them not to always agree with you, and be okay with that. You don't have to require that. It means you allow a sharing of power and control within the power dynamic. Our therapist asked us to do a special date night to kind of repair after the betrayals, the intimacy betrayals. And I was scared. I had a lot of emotional reaction to this because it was requiring me to be vulnerable with him and him to be vulnerable with me. And part of the challenge was to speak honestly to each other about how we were feeling about this date night we were going to have with each other. And I'll never remember. He's all excited, big smiles. By the way, a lot of character disturbed people have a lot of shallow emotions. It may be intense, but it's shallow. So he's all big smiles, all happy. How are you feeling about this? As he's getting close to me, to start the date night with me. And I said, I'm nervous. I'm really scared. And he pulled back and he said, oh, that hurts my feelings. And then he ended up We didn't have that date night. He was so crushed by my fear that he acted like he couldn't go forward with it. Now, looking back, I now know that that was he didn't want this to happen. So it was his way to sabotage what we were trying to do, the work we were trying to do. Number two, real intimacy terrified him. He didn't want to be close to me. And number three, he had no capacity for my emotional experience. So real change, real growth requires a capacity to allow people to be wherever they are, even if it's not something that you're comfortable with. And number 9, it's moral development. You need to have an internalized sense of what's right and wrong and what's going beyond normalcy, beyond civility, beyond hospitality, that you need to know that this is wrong, and you need to be motivated to act with integrity all the time. And you need to understand how your behavior fits into the bigger social ethical context. So moral growth is the anchor that sustains character change. If you have somebody who doesn't have a lot of moral development, they don't have a lot of personal integrity, then there's not going to be probably a sustainable effort at real character change. And then number 10, there needs to be a growth mindset. They need to believe that growth is possible through effort, discomfort, and repetition. And there needs to be an openness to learning, even when there's failure and setbacks, even when it's humbling. And they need to see the failures as part of feedback, not as the end, the end all be all. So as you're listening to all of this, like, yeah, that's difficult. That's why change is hard for all of us. That's why it's hard for me. It's hard for you, because these are really tough things. But when you're talking to somebody who's hides, who doesn't want anyone to know who they really are, who really believes they have a right to a secret life, believe they have a right to do whatever they want to do when no one's watching, they don't want to be accountable, they need to stay in control. That list of change behaviors is nearly impossible. I mean, it would take an extraordinary a person to do that. And I'll tell you, of everybody that I know, I can think of maybe two people that I know who have pretty severe narcissistic traits, who have really sincerely made an effort at this. One of them you don't know, but I think the other person I see really worked very hard at this. And granted, I'm not allowed in his house to know what he's doing on a day in and day out basis, but I think mental illness is one of the rare ones who really does a good job at working very, very hard at this. The other person is somebody who runs a sex addiction program out of Florida. And I know for him, he had a very dark night of the soul. He talks about his story where he just couldn't live with himself. His level of integrity he was breaking. He was realizing that his deception was so severe, and the level of betrayal harm he was doing to his family and his wife was so severe that he couldn't stand himself anymore. So he got to a place where he had to be different, or he wasn't going to be here on earth anymore. And those are the only two people that I think that I can say has done that harder work to really profoundly do some deep, deep changes. But even mental illness would say that his tendency still is to do a narcissistic thing. So let's talk about how to know if you're seeing manipulation. Oh, I said 2 people, not 3 people. There's only 2 people that I know of that I think have really done the hard work. So how do you know if you're seeing pro-change behavior, or if it's just that's manipulation? How do you know if it's real repair and real amends? So here is manipulation tactics, not real change. The apology is the end of the conversation. So instead of an apology is an opening for deeper repair, the apology is just the end of the conversation. There is no more conversation. They don't want to have a conversation. They say all the right things, but they avoid feeling and acknowledging the emotional impact it's having on you. The changes are short-lived. They'll behave differently while under pressure, but they slip back quickly. They apologize for your feelings rather than their actions. They'll say things like I said before, I'm sorry you feel that way. They push for forgiveness and closure to relieve themselves, but not to relieve you. They name drop therapy or books, but it doesn't show real meaningful self-reflection. They cry, shut down, or escalate emotionally as a way to shift attention away from what they've done. They blame external factors like stress, trauma, and triggers to justify harmful behavior. They center their own pain instead of yours when discussing what's happened, and they act changed in public, but it's really just an effort to avoid real intimacy, repair, or ownership. Here's how you know if you're seeing real repair and amends. Watch for these things. The apology is just the beginning, and they know that it's going to take time for you to trust them again. They receive your feedback without defensiveness, even when it's hard to hear. The behavioral change is sustained over time without any reminders from you or any pressure from you. They take ownership from their actions, not just when you react to them. They use tools like therapy and educate to deepen their accountability, not to avoid it. They stay emotionally present even when the conversation is uncomfortable. They take full responsibility without making any excuses or minimizing what happened. Your pain and your healing is centered, not their need for redemption. And they act with integrity, especially when no one's watching. Their private behavior matches their public word. So that's how you know. So I want to offer something to you guys that I'm having a new group starting in September 2nd it's called a relationship reset. It's my second go around of this group. I just finished the first go around, which was amazing. It sold out in a week. With 6 people. It's for women only. So it's only 6 spots for women only. And I'm trying to find the new name that I have for it. Okay, here it is. The new name is the Relationship Reset. It's Rebuild, Reclaim, and Reconnect. So who is this for? If you're somebody who's facing a big problem and you're really, really struggling, you don't know what to do, it feels like you cannot break it, and you really would like some help, then I'd love you to join me for 6 weeks with just 6 women. We're going to workshop your problem. We're going to take your problem from each week a different angle and help you consider it so that you can see a different perspective and get new tools, how to consider it, how to be able to break it apart. So it's going to help you with increased self-awareness. It's going to build some emotional resilience, going to help you build some internal safety and give you a more empowered identity and learn how to exist in the middle of this messiness that you're in. And I know that you're going to walk away feeling more regulated and more confident than you did before. The members that just did it had glowing things to say. They were blown away. In fact, I think at least one of them is going to come back to do it again. So I'm super excited about this. So if you would like to work with me for 6 weeks, it's an hour and 15 minutes. We meet on Tuesday, just before this, actually. This is it starts at Tuesday, at 2:45 and goes to 2:30 and goes to 3:45. So it's literally just before this live. I would love to work with you. It starts September 2nd, and you can learn more about it. It's a link in my bio. And so, please don't hesitate. And the second opportunity for those, maybe you're somebody who's been in a toxic relationship and you've gotten out, but you feel like the healing has not been linear and it's not been easy, and you're just flooded with guilt. Maybe you're really angry that you can't seem to get over it. Maybe you just cannot stop blaming yourself, or you're ruminating and it's just driving you nuts. Then join me for a 12-week live group coaching program that starts August 14th. So August 14th is the newer one, closer one. It goes for 12 weeks. It's a weekly commitment. Again, we're going to meet on Thursday afternoons for that one. So if you're looking for help, either with a big problem, consider the Relationship Reset, or you're looking to heal after getting out of a bad relationship, check out Healing Strong. It's a 12-week group coaching program. Okay, so let's turn it over to talk about your questions for me. I'm going to get out of the way so I can see your questions. So, I know someone mentioned that there are other self-aware narcissists who are making big waves. I don't know Leon Walker to really comment on him. I know he follows me, but I don't really know. And Raw Motivations, I'm aware of him. I just get really edgy with self-aware narcissists who are in the survivors realm, trying to heal survivors. What I like about mental illness, it's doing a little different, is he's not really trying to heal survivors. He's trying to warn survivors what healing looks like. Oh, you want me to repeat what number 3 was? That's what I didn't get what your question is, Tammy. Let me see if I can pull it up to get that. It may take me some moments to get there, but number 3 was, you're looking for number 3 too. I have a lot of everything's organized. Is number 3 there's a lot of number 3s. So Tammy, will you tell me what number 3 is? Are you talking about the necessary skills to change, or are you talking about, if it's the necessary skills to change, number 3 is emotional regulation. They need to have good emotional regulation. His actions. Their changes are short-lived. They behave differently under pressure and start to slip back quickly. So watch out for when the changes are short-lived. By the way, if you guys don't know, this is taped. You can find it on Facebook and YouTube. Facebook holds it for a month. YouTube, it's permanent. So you can go look for this. On YouTube, it's called, today's session is called, I think, Why They Don't Change or something like that. But you could find it by the date for January or July 1st. So what's your questions? I'm watching all three platforms right now. I'm watching, and for those of you who are on YouTube, I know you've been so loved and babied by our mods, and they're not there today. So if you've asked a question earlier, I will not have seen it because I had my notes in front of me. So you'll have to ask me again. And for those of you who are my subscribers on YouTube, I'm going to make sure that you guys have the link to be able to join me for the Ask Me Anything. So if you're a paid subscriber on YouTube, there's an Ask Me Anything event on July 9th. So questions for you. I'm glad I make sense. I feel like I stumble a lot. I don't know if I make sense. So I'm always glad to hear that I make sense. So Summer Sun asks, and I'm approving all the filtered comments. Amazing to me, the comments that filters out here. Is it possible to heal from sex addiction? Wow, that's a big question. I'll tell you, I'm doubtful. I'm very doubtful. The reason I'm doubtful is one, because the research is not very supportive of it. So whenever you do research, there's always room for error. So you can't ever measure something perfectly. There's a degree that you're wrong. You got it wrong. You're either going to get it wrong and diagnose or say it's happening too often, or you're going to get it wrong and you're going to miss people it's happening to. It's called type 1 or type 2 errors when you're doing research. The error measure for error for sex addiction is about the same as the amount of reported improvement. What that means is then they don't really know is it just error or are they actually improving? That's what it means. So it's super small. The odds of improvement are super small and it's near error. So it may mean it's close to zero is the sad news. Why is that? Well, sex addiction, some people would say it doesn't exist. I do think it does exist. I think it's a person using physical act of intimacy as a way to avoid their emotional experiences and avoid other very difficult psychological difficulties and stress. Yes, there are real people who do struggle with that. But I also know that acting out, that type of acting out is really common when you are psychopathic, sociopathic, or you're narcissistic. It's extremely common way of because you believe that you're entitled and the rules don't apply to you and you have poor impulse control. I mean, all the things that I just talked about that makes change hard. Well, those also make it really easy to do bad things. It's very easy to act out and justify your behavior. So that's why it's a frequent problem among narcissists and psychopaths, because they believe that they deserve it. They see something they want it. And they don't appreciate the damage they're doing to the other person because that person's not really a person. That person's just a tool, in that moment. So I'm very skeptical about the possibility of healing from it. Next question is, do you see alcoholism or addiction and narcissism intersect in behavior? Yeah, I do. Because of the narcissist and sociopath's problem with impulse control and novelty seeking, that means then they often will resort to using substances. That's a common problem among this group, is frequent acting out around that. Again, partly because they believe they deserve it. They justify those types of behavior. So they really, sort of see... they see that. Hope Ray, Hope Ray, are you the Hope Ray I know? Please let me know. I'd be thrilled if you are. There's a Hope Ray who actually is doing a study on betrayal, how betrayal is betrayal violence. So I don't know if you are that same person or not. Oh, yes, you are. Oh, I really would love to have you on and have you for an interview. I know I sent you the link. Please come on my podcast. So Hope Ray, if you guys are not following her, please follow her. She's right now on TikTok talking to me. She's doing this massive research on betrayal violence. I love that. I do think betrayal is a form of violence. And I'm thrilled that she's doing this research. And but she says she's married to an amazing man who's doing the hard work. So yes, I do think, I didn't say that it's not possible. I just said that I'm very concerned about it, because I think a lot of it is, I think it takes an enormous amount of accountability and really all the right kinds of integrity to do this. So Hope, I'm thrilled that you have a partner who's doing that hard work. So yes, is it possible? Oh, you're working with that person. You're not married to them. Okay. Yes. So is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But here's what I get concerned about is that there's a lot of us who are in that realm who want hope. I love your name. You have your hope is your name, but who want hope that the relationship's not over. And so we bank on change and we miss the fact that it's often superficial. It's everything that I talked about today. It's not authentic change. So please, if you're in that camp and your heart is on the line with this person, hoping there's going to be real change, please go back and review what I said it takes to really change. I know for me, what was powerful after I got out of that toxic relationship was I did a continuing education course on repair from affairs, which is a little bit different tactic, but similar. And I'll tell you, everything that continuing educator said, who was a psychologist, said, none of that happened in my relationship. There was no real effort to repair. It was back to what I said, pro-change behavior. It was just more manipulation. So I'm so thrilled, Hope, that you'll be on. I know that will be an incredible interview. I'm just really, really thrilled. Other questions for me today? I'm going to go back and look through YouTube to see if I've missed something. Yeah, this is a powerful statement that was said on a while back. I don't know if this person's still there, but the greatest thing you can do for yourself is to give up on a person's potential. I agree. It's a hard thing. It took me shifting my focus from finding safety in a relationship to finding safety in myself. And that's really hard when we have been socialized to really put all our time, effort, and love in a relationship. And to really see that, especially as a woman, I'm not saying men don't do this, but women really do this, is that our sense of self is derived from the relationship. So it takes this massive shift that's extremely hard to make. So yeah, I agree that you could do is to give up on a potential of somebody. You got to really do that. Tammy asked about commercials. Yes, on YouTube, this has ads. I've said to say it does have ads. So, and in fact, I appreciate you guys writing through the ads on YouTube, because this is one of the major ways that I help cover my expenses is you sticking through the ads. So thank you so much for the fact that you're there with me today and hanging out with me. It means a lot. Yeah, so somebody's sharing that she has a friend who has a narcissistic stalker, and they've even pressed charges, but she's very afraid of retaliation. There is a reason to be. That's a legitimate concern. Has your friend read the book by Gavin DeBecker called The Gift of Fear? I would recommend that highly. So it's a really great, very great book that talks about how to know when the risk is actually really high. It talks about one of the things about not cornering somebody and taking away all their sense of control. He gives some really great solutions about how to make changes for safety without activating somebody to do more dangerous things. Yeah, I would suggest she reads it. In fact, I found it hard to read. I actually listened to it and found it easier to hear than it was for me to read, but that could have just been me. I don't know, but it's a fantastic book. Yeah, somebody's talking about the difficulty with regulation. It is very difficult. Self-regulation is hard. A lot of the stuff that we are going through that when we're reacting is because we're also struggling with regulation, self-regulation. Somebody right now is mentioning that the P. Diddy trials is being aired, and about the question of Cassie and the fact that she loved him. Does that then mean that he was not guilty because of that? And I read a really great comment by somebody that said that's just a distraction. It's not actually a authentic reason to say somebody's okay. Just because you love somebody doesn't mean that their behavior isn't bad. Their behavior is still bad. That doesn't take away the badness of behavior. So I just find that interesting. They're trying to make that claim that because she has feelings for him, then he couldn't have possibly hurt her. That somehow like she consented to the bad things. It's just bizarre the ways that, again, watch for the mental shifts that are going through. No, that you can have feelings for somebody while they betray you. You can self-abandon while you're in a relationship. I know it just doesn't make sense. I agree. It's just bizarre how we do that. Well, this has been wonderful. This hour went super fast. Next week, we're going to be talking about the addictive cycle. So I hope you'll come back and join me for that. And then on 2 weeks from now, on the 14th, I'm going to be doing this live at a weird time. I'm going to be doing it early in the day because I'm getting ready to fly out to see my dear friend, the Echo Chamber in her country. I'm going international. So, but I want to fit in the live because that live is going to be a good one. It's why you're second guessing yourself. So I want to get into why you're second guessing yourself, why we doubt ourselves and are filled with so much confusion. So next week, it's on the addictive cycle of narcissistic abuse. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to be talking about our second guessing ourselves, the doubt we have, and why we keep struggling to leave because we just aren't for sure we're right. Maybe we're the problem. So if that resonates with you, I hope you'll join me next week and the week after. But in 2 weeks from now, it'll be a weird time. It won't be at this time. So just watch, pay attention to when I'm advertising it. All right, you guys, this was a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's funny, TikTok is running a competition and I've ranked 99 percentile, like bottom. It's so funny. But I just appreciate you guys so much for being here. I really, really appreciate this. This is wonderful. And thanks for those of you who've expressed, talked about my podcast today. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. I've had that for 3 years now. The fall and winter is almost completely taped. I'm almost completely wrapped up for the year, and we'll be starting next year's taping. So I'm, and I'll tell you, it's the best lineup I've ever had. Honestly, best lineup I've ever had. It's going to be fantastic. And longer. I'm going to do a little bit longer interviews. And I'm adding, I forgot to mention this. I'm adding a new segment, guys. I'm adding a segment called Fan Mail. So if you have a question for me that you would like me to answer on air on that podcast, it's going to be a Thursday, short episode on Thursday, will be Fan Mail. Please post a question in any comment and put fan mail, and then put your question. And that will be a tag to me saying, Kerry, I give you permission to talk about this on the podcast for that segment. So please send me your questions. I've got a couple months taped, but I really want to hear from you and make sure we talk about what you want to talk about. So I'll be answering your question. And you'd help me if you would say where you're from. Like, I'm going to refer to you by New York and New York, or Syracuse, New York, or Atlanta, Georgia says. So I won't be using your name. I'm going to use your location as a way to identify you. All right, you guys have a great day. And remember, this relationship reset, if you have a really big problem you want help with, and Healing Strong if you're looking to heal after narcissistic abuse and you're struggling. And I'll see you guys back here next week.